Welcome back, everyone. Hope you all had enjoyed the little break and are geared up for the upcoming sessions. Joining us next for an illustrious fireside chat are S. Pasupathi, COO, HirePro, and Varadharaj Venkataraman, VP and Head Recruiting, Global Contingent Staffing, Infosys, and Apeksha Kaushik, Senior Content Producer, Economic Times, ETHRWorld, as Session Moderator. Welcome, everyone. The frame is all yours.
Hello and welcome everyone to this very pertinent and riveting discussion on recruitment transformations, crafting a new talent acquisition approach. Recruitment has experienced a facelift and acceleration in key trends in a post-COVID world of work. As the hiring volume is anticipated to be either at par with that of the last year or more, remote recruitment is here to stay. With added complexity of business operations and borderless work, the talent pool continues to sprawl, and recruiters are adopting creative and innovative ways of crafting a fresh talent acquisition approach. To further discuss on these lines, I have with me S. Pasupathi, COO, HirePro, and Varadharaj Vardha, VP and Head, India Recruiting, Global Contingent Staffing, Infosys. We welcome both of you.
Thanks, Apeksha.
So, to just roll out with the discussion and to begin, I would like to open the floor to both of you and have your perspective on how do we actually sum up the recruitment scenario of 2021 and what are some of the trends to watch out for in 2022. So, Pasupathi, if we can start with you here.
Sure, Apeksha. I think, of course, the entire industry has been talking about it. I think the last year has been like one of the largest hiring numbers that the overall industry has seen. And this is across sectors, across industries. And I would say at least the Indian, I would say the entire talent industry has never seen so much of hiring that has really happened. I mean, IT services companies have typically hired almost 4 to 5 times their regular numbers. And then some of the others have at least hired 2 to 3 times of what typically would be their annual numbers. And given the fact that there was a slowdown between April, May, June because of the second wave, so you can imagine the amount of pressure that has actually gone into the overall system in terms of hiring. Obviously, multiple factors, attrition, the lot of money that has come in, investments. So that's why you see the lot of activities in the startup ecosystem where everybody is being hiring. Digitization, of course, has kind of led to more of tech adoption, which has kind of created the demand. Even at the entry level, the organization have really gone up, increased their hiring numbers. So some of the organizations would hire, say, 100, 200, 300 from an off-campus, in-campus model, have actually almost hired 2 to 3,000 or even higher numbers. So because everybody's been kind of relying on entry-level talent for their next level of growth as well, because the lateral talent at the end of the day, all said and done, is fairly limited. So I think the mantra has largely been around hiring, the kind of volume that has gone up. Some of the other trends, which has been very interesting, is also technology adoption has also grown up in some of these hiring processes because organizations are trying to look at challenges. 2022, some of the things that we see is, I think organizations have realized that hiring is possible, but engaging people remotely has become a challenge. So one of the trends that we are seeing is organizations are moving towards tier 2 cities where they're setting up offices where at least people can come in and work 2 to 3 years. I mean, 2 to 3 days in a week. I think it's the other way where organizations are now going towards the talent rather than trying to get talent in, because that looks more sustainable. Once people are in office, you're able to engage, attrition will kind of get managed. Campus hiring will continue to be big. So that is where. One of the key things that everybody's talking today and probably will continue through the year is, last 2 years, nobody has kind of connected, whereas a lot of organizations have done a lot of good work internally. They want to really talk about it. So everyone is talking about branding solutions because the hiring for the last 2 years has been fairly faceless. No candidate has walked into the office. Hiring managers have not really spent time with the candidate on premise to talk, and they're not seen the kind of look and feel of the organization. So hiring has been faceless. So I think one of the key focus areas would be saying how do we kind of brand ourselves better to kind of attract talent, obviously, because the hiring numbers are definitely high this year as well.
So in my view, I think I concur with a lot of what Pasupathi has already articulated. The year 2021 has been really a year of high scale and growth in the industry, and recruitment has never had the kind of robustness and the volumes that they've had to fulfill like they did in the last 9 months, right, in 2021. And I'm just talking about Infosys. If we look at the last 9 months of this financial year, we have hired more people in the last 9 months than we did in the previous 2 financial years combined, right? So that's the sort of scale that we're really talking about. And with the pandemic and movement to a completely virtualized platform and mode of recruitment, a lot of practices and beliefs and even operating procedures that have been established, they have been completely busted. And honestly, I think work has started moving to where the talent is rather than the other way, right? Be it in terms of establishing small offices in various tier 2 locations, or actually trying to give tremendous amount of flexibilities to the talent pool itself in terms of permanent work from home offers, completely remote, and so on and so forth, right? And I think the flexibilities that the system has brought out in order to overcome the challenges or take advantage of this opportunity of talent being available anywhere and work being delivered out of anywhere has been phenomenal in the industry. And in my view, I think sales has not been a real challenge. Getting new business has not been a real challenge, especially in the last 1 year. But the single biggest challenge that organizations have faced and continue to face is with regard to staffing of those positions and getting the appropriate number of people and skilling them and upskilling them and enabling them to make sure that they are able to deliver to the clients. And if I look at 2022 from a trend perspective, I think even assuming the pandemic comes to an end or under control in some sense, I would envisage that a lot of the changes that have happened during the last year is really here to stay, right? And especially with regard to the way we undertake recruiting, the way the people are treated, people are managed, people are engaged, a lot of this is going to, they're best practices that have evolved out of a calamity. But I think they are really things that organizations will continue to propagate and evolve as they go along with this going forward as well.
Sure, Vardha. So, like we've already touched upon few, areas which will continue to make their mark in the recruitment scenario. Pashupati, I would like to have this question for you here. We're already talking about the trends kind of thing. So one of the trends like in virtual hiring and all, which we have seen has grown tremendously over the past 24 months or so. So what are the key industry learnings here, and does it fulfill the hiring requirements of employers in high volume?
Before the pandemic set in as well, organizations always had some form of virtual hiring to, at least in some of the industries or in the initial stages of the recruitment process. For example, a couple of organizations had toyed out with this idea of trying to do remote assessments in campus before they actually land in. In good number of organizations, there used to be phone screen activities or sometimes have a quick video chat and then call people for a face-to-face interviews. So there was this entire trend of, at the end of the day, the hiring managers are always comfortable only when they meet the candidate in person. And somewhere the entire focus around recruitment was the recruitment drive or the location where it is to happen. So the candidate had to choose, if I speak from a Bangalore context, has to figure out whether they go to Manyata office or they go to the Electronic City office or the Outer Ring Road office, because that's where the hiring manager is. And the candidate had to kind of figure out how do they land up in this place. So this entire process of virtual hiring, obviously first people did not have a choice. So they had to kind of figure out how to do this. And once it started off, I think the entire focus of virtual hiring now is around the candidate. I mean, I would say that is one of the key learnings that has really happened. And now you see everything that is happening on is focused around the candidate. So be it automation. So today people are talking about things which can make the candidate better user, or how they really kind of, they have the power to manage a lot of these things. And some of the things which are done on the virtual hiring today as well is at an entry level, if you speak around various layers of hiring, at an entry level, there's a lot of focus on, can we do the first level of assessments? The candidate choose when they want to take the assessments. There are more hackathons and challenges through which we are trying to hire people. Assessments involve proctoring. So you need not really figure out whether any kind of unfair means has been used in these kind of assessments that has really happened. If you talk about lateral hiring, today people talk about, can I get some mechanism where I pick up schedules from the candidate and then I go back to the hiring managers. Most of the times it was the other way around, saying hiring manager is available now, when can the candidate come in? Two reasons. One obviously is that the hiring volumes are fairly high and attrition is high, the joining ratios are poor. So there is a lot of focus that is going on the candidate side. But at the same time, because everything is happening remote, a good amount of focus has actually shifted to the candidate side of things. I think that's one of the learnings I would say that the industry has kind of picked up. Some of the other innovative things that is happening is, today organizations have also realized that the internal bandwidth to do interviews is not that much. And second, if I have an external unbiased interviewer feedback with me, my ability to use that candidature across job applications increases. So that is the reason where we now see almost an exponential growth in outsourced interviewing. One is bandwidth, second is you're able to kind of reuse the candidature and so on. So I would say this is one of the reasons, because of virtual hiring is why this is happening, because the interviewer by and large is a freelancer, not really part of the organization, comes onto virtual platform along with the candidate, gets the interview done. And in some of these places, these are recorded video interviews. So some of the hiring managers are more comfortable to go through the video and say, hey, I'm okay with this individual. I really do not want to go through the entire process of interviewing again and trying to do this. In some of our clients, what we have seen is where there's an end client interview as well. Our client organizations are doing the interview and then passing on the video to their end customers and saying, hey, this is what we have done. Because in the past, it was always a candidate go through multiple processes, more or less the same questions being asked. And then there was a lot of wastage of time. So, I mean, these are some of the benefits I would say organizations have to do it. And just to add what Vardha said, yes, some of these processes are going to stay. I believe even if you have a hybrid work environment, remote interviewing and virtual hiring will still happen. People really do not want long queues outside their office where people come for a drive. The admin guy is freaking out saying, how do I manage security of this place and so on. So I think virtual hiring is going to stay.
Sure. Thank you, Pashupati. So, while we have discussed the kind of scope and significance that virtual hiring has, shown in the past few months with all this pandemic around and all, and it has always been there actually, but the kind of growth that is shown and the acceptance there. So, Vardha, from a corporate perspective, from an organization perspective, if you can, let us know, is virtual hiring a barrier when it comes to delivering the best candidate experience? Is there some kind of a gap there?
Okay, so in my view, I think while virtual recruiting is the process itself is a little more nuanced than the physical interviewing process, I think we have enough technology today to overcome the challenges or even constraints, right? So for example, today we have tools that can sift through thousands of resumes in seconds and throw up the best fit candidates for a particular requirement. Or even otherwise, a candidate just puts up his or her resume into the system, it gets parsed, and the system is then able to throw up relevant job opportunities from within the ATS itself and say that these are those 5-6 positions or 3 positions where we believe this position you will be most suited for, right? So it's kind of making the whole process fairly simplified for the candidates and for the recruiters as well, right? And then there are tools that can make an outreach to tens of thousands of candidates within a few minutes. And there are, of course, bots that can probably guide the candidates through the job search in the application form process, the auto search, auto scheduling of interviews, and also trigger appropriate emails and communication and messages, and triggers to make sure that both the panelists and the candidates are also participating and showing up at the appropriate time, right? And above all, I think in the physical world, when we used to bring in about whatever thousands of people to a particular development center or an office location, And there's like a lounge that really happens. So the tools today are actually replicating many of those physical interfaces itself, right? Where there are virtual lounges that are created, where candidates come in, show up, they are there, they're waiting for the interview time, they're looking at some videos, some learning material and content about the organization. And while when panelists come in, the moment one panelist gets free, then the system is automatically able to map those candidates and assign those interviews and get them initiated as well. So there is that bit of efficiency that's also getting built in from an overall recruitment and scheduling and interview management process itself, right? In all this, I think some of these efficiency enhancements that we believe many of these tools will bring will also give extra time to the recruiters to really make a connect with the candidates. I think more than just going through an interview, I think most candidates love to have interactions with recruiters, and they really take a lot of, I would say, they really remember the recruiters that have given the best experience to them as well, right? So I think the effort that the recruiters put in trying to source and screen resumes, if they are able to divert a part of that through leveraging technology in order to connect with the candidate and make them go through a very, very seamless hiring and onboarding process, then I think the candidate experience itself goes up by several notches. The rates itself goes up by several notches because the overall process itself has been very seamless, right? And I think, in my view, I think lastly, the organizations really need to look at their entire process, touch points with the candidates, panelists, recruiters, and various other stakeholders, and put these people at the center, and ideally put the candidate at the center of a virtual recruiting process and design the entire recruiting process around that. Then I think the overall candidate experience can only get better and better from here as well. And it's not that even during physical interview processes, everything was happening physically and candidates were connecting with the recruiters physically and stuff. There were always those virtual modes of connect that the recruiters always used to do, even then, including many of those information pieces and bringing those candidates into a talent pool, talent community, making them part of a portal, let's say, and giving them tidbits and information and so on and so forth, which kind of makes them sticky or more associated and aligned with the requirements of the organization or the value and the EVPs that the organizations have to propose to many of those candidates. So I think all in all, I guess the virtual recruiting process has only amplified the ability of platforms and processes and organizations to provide much better candidate experience, especially when somebody goes through a long multiple rounds of interviews and so on and so forth. So I think it's in my view, I think it's a very positive evolution. The virtual interview process will certainly help companies attain scale in terms of recruiting and be able to reach out to candidates and also sustainably engage with them right through the process from application to onboarding and maybe even continuing beyond that as well.
Sure, Vardha. Pasupathi, connecting what we have discussed so far in terms of remote hiring and recruitment technologies and all those things, the trends which we have captured. Do you think that automation is enabling the industry's need for remote high volume hiring actually, and from sourcing to onboarding, the entire process of it? And what advice would you give to TA leaders who are taking cognizance of remote environment at this point?
Sure. So I think Vardha very nicely articulated all the, at least the innovation and the tools that are currently available on recruitment. So I would like to give it a slightly different flavor of how the adoption and the usage and, where some of these things need to be kind of taken care. See, recruitment automation has been there at least for the last 8-10 years. So there have been applicant tracking systems, and at least my entire friends in the recruitment community would understand when ATS and how it is really used. It was largely used for compliance rather than convenience, right? Because some of the workflows were not really fine-tuned for the volume hiring that happens in the Indian context. Now, and let me give you very classic examples of how currently in some places automation is getting used and still it's not very helpful. Let's assume an organization has decided to do remote interviews. So they would pick up one of the tools which is used for meeting, which is used for regular office meetings. Now they need to figure out whether it's the right candidate coming in. So in most of these cases, the recruiter logs in along with the panel, along with the candidate, because they do not want the interviewer mail ID to be shared with the candidate. Then they take the photograph of the candidate when the person comes in for the interview process, and they log out. They do it for the second round of interview. And then when the HR onboarding happens, somebody needs to see who came in, how is the photograph stored. The feedback is still collected over an email. Now, if you realize some of these systems, if not really done very seamlessly, actually becomes very painful. So even though you're using automation, but these are all broken, unconnected systems. And broken systems are much more painful than no systems. I think the primary thing around the automation, and which organizations have actually figured out, I would say in 2021, and what they're trying to do in 2022 is very different. So people now are talking about specialized interviewing platforms like what Vardha spoke about, where a candidate comes in, you're able to do their auto check using one of their valid ID cards. You have an opportunity to do some kind of branding when they're waiting through that virtual lounge for around 5-10 minutes. They come in, the interviewer gets to know the entire feedback of the candidate from the first round of interview, or a synopsis of the resume, which would have come in from that intelligent parser. They both are interacting. Now the interviewer is not really focused on to validate whether it's the same guy who's coming, because probably the person has grown a beard, removed his mustache, and the interviewer is now confused the photograph that was given to me. So the focus is on the interview rather than trying to validate whether the candidate is there. There's a coding platform available. They share some conversations, ask the candidate to write code. They're able to run all of those, and the interviewer also gets a panel where they fill in the feedback, which sends out a trigger to the recruiter, because typically a recruiter calls up the hiring manager and says, hey, what was the interview? How's the feedback? Some of these things are getting seamlessly done if you have a very specialized recruitment automation. I think this year, all the recruitment leadership is going back to their CIO organization or going to their external partners to say, hey, tell me what is that, are you going to solve all my problems or not? I really do not want parts of the problem to be solved, because it still adds to much more effort and things, because everybody is kind of working remote. So that way, I would say there has been not only emphasis of innovation, but adoption has also increased big time, which is actually very good for service providers who build recruitment automation tools, and also for the organization internally, where they're able to leverage technology and kind of really able to scale well.
Sure, Pashupati. Thank you for that. And Vardha, while we're not drifting from what we are discussing, but taking it to a little more deeper level from an organization, this thing. So there are a lot of research and reports, studies globally, trends that predict that diversity at workplaces is emerging to be a focus area for organizations. So how does the role of recruitment evolve in this direction?
So diversity has always been a key focus area, especially for the IT industry, right? And large IT organizations, especially like Infosys and its peers, we boast of an over 35% diversity ratio, which is quite phenomenal. And generally, I think most of these organizations are also undertaking multiple other interventions to enhance us even further. In my view, I think the ownership of increasing diversity in the workforce should not rest solely with recruitment. This has to be a KPI for every single individual in the value chain, right from the top, right? And today, with remote working opportunities, it presents a very compelling proposition and opportunity for mainstreaming women, for example, who have taken a break or have quit their careers due to family reasons, right? And organizations essentially need to create a path for them really to get back into the workforce through internships, mentoring, training, and enablement and stuff. And I think coupled with this, the whole the permanent work from home or temporary work from home, or even part-time work from home options, part-time work options as well, right? Or even fixed-term contracts in that sense. I think these are things that have really come to the fore, especially in the last 1 year. And I think this is going to continue as well. And these are avenues and opportunities that companies must leverage in order to utilize and enhance the overall diversity quotient itself within the organization. And I think this also gives us an ability to tap into talent wherever they are, rather than expecting them to come to an office and be tagged to a particular development center and keep relocating and so on and so forth, right? So I think this kind of has opened up a very secularized avenue or even a paradigm in terms of an access to a talent which otherwise would have been quite limited in reach itself. And in a nutshell, I think the diversity has to be on the radars of the CXOs and must consistently reflect on the KPIs for everybody: unit leadership, people managers, technology managers, and all enabler functions, including recruitment. So all in all, I think it has to be an organizational strategy, initiatives that are correspondingly undertaken therein. And there is complete alignment across the value chain in the employee pyramid to trying to make sure that we are collectively making those efforts and we move the needle towards a more diverse organization as well. Well, the advantages and benefits of having a diverse workforce in the organizational pyramid has been researched multiple number of times. So it does bring in tremendous amount of innovation, ownership, accountability, and a drive towards organizational success as well. So I think in my view, I think diversity has to continue becoming more prominent in the overall minds of the recruiters landscape, as well as every manager in the organization as well. Back to you, Apeksha.
Thank you, Vardha. In fact, thanks to both of you. There were some great insights and some very practical lessons here that we have, got to know on a very pivotal topic on recruitment, and especially in the times in the unprecedented era and also uncertain times where, the change is something which is evident through and through. So we have to keep growing and transforming and taking it to the next level. So thank you for this very interesting and insightful discussion. I'm sure the audience will have a lot of takeaways to take back from here. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Pasupathi, Varadharaj, and Apeksha for sharing your point of view. We thoroughly enjoyed the insights. And now let's proceed further. I'm going to see you on the other side now.